Welcome back to the Public Safety Building Committee Update Part 2. This time around, I have with me two members of the Public Safety Building Committee who are going to help us understand a little bit about how we got to where we are with the building and some more detail on what is happening next. So let me start by having our guests introduce themselves. Jamie, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Jamie Fay. I am currently serving as chair of the Finance Committee, and I am the Finance Committee's representative to the Public Safety Building Committee. I've been on the Finance Committee since 1990. I've been a resident of Ipswich since 1978. I have 5 kids. They are all educated in the public schools and very much committed to the town.
Thanks, Jamie. And Bob.
I'm Bob Weatherall, and I've been chairing this committee since 2017 when it was formed. Grew up in Ipswich, and for better or for worse, I'm, I think, the 4th generation of Ipswich Weatherall or Lunt on my mother's side who have been actively volunteering in town life. Grew up in a household of town volunteers, and I'm carrying it on to the best I can. I'm a builder and residential designer. So I joined this committee because I've got a long-standing enthusiasm and interest in residential design, design of buildings generally, and I got on because I cared deeply about how this project came to be and would be built.
Thanks, Bob. So we're going to jump right in and have you all start with a brief history of the project. And I say brief because I know that we've been talking about a public safety building for what? I think almost 70 years now, we learned from our last discussion with the chiefs. So who would like to start to give us just a sort of framework on how we got to where we are today?
Well, I could give it a start because, as I
That'd be
said,
great, thank you.
it was the winter of 2016-17 that the select board put the word out that they wanted 3 citizens to be part of a committee that was being formed to study the understood need for a new public safety facility or facilities. At that time, we were thinking, would it be a single building or would it be 2?
Okay.
So seeing that they were asking for volunteers, I volunteered. 4 of us showed up that night of the citizen side to join, and they looked for 3, but they looked at us and thought, we'll take all of you. So I've been involved ever since. As you've said, it's the extension, the outcome of nearly 75 years, I think, since the town commissioned a design for an addition to the the Central Street building. That's kind of our mile marker on this, is somebody saw the need to fix what we had that many years ago, and here we are continuing the effort.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've personally been involved in this since about 2002, where we undertook a very detailed study of our public safety needs and fire station needs, and there's a lot of professional expertise brought on at that point in time to help us take a look at our facilities and figure out what we need, and that effort came to naught. There was sort of another effort 5 years after that to try to revitalize the effort. Again, couldn't come up with a good solution, a good site. And then, more recently, this committee has been put together and I think has done a really credible job. I did not join when Bob did. I've only been on for about 3 years. We had other members of the Finance Committee sitting on this committee, but since that time, since it was set up at late 2016, early 2017, the committee has done a great deal of work, and I'm sure many of you remember that in May of 2018, the town meeting appropriated money, I think it was $140,000 if I remember, to hire a design team to help the committee, Public Facilities Committee, scope out what the town needed and look at locations for the facility. in October of 2020, approximately 2 years after that, they came back with a recommendation for a site, at which point town meeting approved by an 80% majority vote the acquisition of the current facility site that's being proposed on the corner of Linebrook and Pine Swamp Road. Following that pretty critical decision point to locate the facility on that corner, the next step was to fund money to actually then carry out design and permitting for that project. And that was approved in the October 2021 town meeting by 70%, I'm sorry, by a 2/3 majority at town meeting. I don't know what the actual number was, but it was, the moderator declared it was a 2/3 majority. And that subsequently went to a town-wide ballot where all the voters of the community got to vote on that. And that was approved by 70% of the voters in town. So, you know, this project has worked in a very steady sequence. We all wish it maybe was moving faster than it is, but it's been a very steady sequence of the right steps and the right conversations at town meeting and requesting town meeting to endorse each step of the approval along the way. So I think we feel really good about kind of really following town meeting's direction on this.
Great.
And bring this project forward.
You know, no question that those of us who've been involved in this project for the last nearly 7 years now, is that throughout the whole thing, we've always heard from the town, there's no question we need it. We may have conversations about site design and cost, but there's no question we need it.
Yep. It's not often you can say that you're working on a multi-generational project, right?
Feels like it, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It's 75 years. That does transcend quite a few sort of volunteer lifetimes. So we find ourselves today almost kind of within breathing distance, if you will, of realizing the vision of bringing our police and our fire together under one roof to create efficiencies for the town, to create a better working environment for them, and to really improve our overall community response.
Yeah, it's exciting to be this close.
It really is. It really is. So what I'd love for you to share with the viewers right now is sort of, okay, what's on the immediate horizon? What should they expect to see happening over the next 3 months?
Well, I'll start and say that currently our architectural team in Cambridge is working on the construction documents, the set of drawings and specifications that will prepare us to put this project out to bid in January. So our goal is for our architectural team to have this project's construction documents ready by the end of December, so that we can then put it into the state's program, the protocols for bidding. We would ideally get bids back at the end of January, and obviously the optimistic hope is that we're going to get bids that fit our budget then. And then we'll, as soon as possible, start construction.
Great, great. Okay. Do we have construction folks lined up, or will that be a bid process as well?
Well, it's a complex process that I'm only learning as I stay involved, and it has to do with pre-qualifying off of state pre-qualified list of subcontractors, the group that would be, whose bids for the project would be acceptable. It also involves hiring a general contractor to work with those subcontractors. So no, we don't have a builder yet, but we're just on the threshold of beginning the process of pre-qualifications that will put us in a position so that when bids come in at the end of January, they're bids from builders and subcontractors who are already proven and credentialed to work in the state of Massachusetts to build these things.
Great, great.
Yeah, and I just add that, I mean, we were originally hoping in our schedule to be at that point of bidding within the next month or so. But as I'm sure many people who read the local newspaper or follow local events know, this project has been subject to a very detailed review by our town boards and commissions. And Bob, I think we've had 17 public hearings on this project since we made the initial filings in April and May, and here it is October. We finally, I mean, the good news is we have all of our approvals.
Yeah.
We received basically unanimous approvals from all of our town boards, from the ZBA, from the Planning Board, from the Conservation Commission. And so that was actually, in my mind, a very good process, because it allowed a lot of opportunity for public comment on the project. We did make changes in the design of the project in response to concerns over everything from design of the building to turning movements going in and out of the site to stormwater runoff, wetlands protection. I mean, I think that's, there was a concern, I think, that somehow this project, because it's a town project, was getting a shortcut. We did not get any shortcuts. We went through the full process. Maybe even because it was a town project, we got even more scrutiny. I don't know.
I think that's the case. I think
Fair enough.
I think conservation and planning and zoning, each in their way, made a point, either overtly or in their process, of saying, you are not going to get anything special because you're a town project. You're going to go through all the strenuous reviews that any project coming before us would. And I wanted to add what Jamie said, that not only about the sort of the technical stuff about stormwater management, runoff, and that sort of things, but also was a lot of conversation, a lot of really intense conversation about context setting, compatibility. Really
Context
close.
setting compatibility.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
that means within the town's bylaws, which spell out that there must be a review of those things, and that any project must conform to a certain set of standards that gauge that this building, like other buildings of this size and this scope, would have to show to the satisfaction of the planning board in this case, that the design, the siting, the site planning, the landscape planning, and so forth, all are working towards making this building fit in the context in which it's going to be placed, that it becomes a good teammate in the neighborhood in which it's going to be placed, that sort of thing.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's the nature of a special permit. One of the things that's part of a special permit application before planning. And of course, the zoning board of appeals can apply certain measures to assure the public that that which is under their review for special relief under zoning is given conscientiously with the greater good in mind.
But through that process, there were significant changes in the design of the building, and that's what we're now working to bring forward to the final contract drawing. So we're really excited about that.
A little bit like being the coach's kid, huh?
Maybe.
Right? Got to be above and beyond reproach. Well, thank you for that. So with any major capital project like this, there's always sort of two aspects. The first is the need, right? What are we trying to solve for? How does this improve our community? And the second is the money. Because unfortunately, these things cost money. So I know that the town has, and the town taxpayers have graciously approved $27 million for this project, so that's great. And we are now finding that we will have some additional support in the form of ARPA funds. And I know that the whole concept of ARPA funds is maybe a little bit new to folks or not well understood. So I was hoping you all could take a moment and help our viewers understand what that money is and how it will be applied to this project.
Well, I think before we jump into that, I
Okay.
think you're looking at the two guys that got up on the town soccer field
Yeah.
and promised town meeting that we'd never come back and ask for more
Well,
money.
I'm very
right?
aware
That
of
is
that.
true.
Okay.
That is true. And
won't
still I
forget
speak
that.
to both of you.
So, you know, you go back and look. We're the guys who said we're not coming back for more money. So I think it's important to understand the context, right, of
Agreed.
where we were in 2021 and where we are in 2023, right?
Yeah.
So And I'm the Finance Committee's representative to this committee, whose primary job is to keep an eye on the budget, right? So we had what we thought was a very solid estimate for the cost of the project. And the cost of the project is not just the cost of the building, it's the cost of the building and everything else you need to do to make that project happen. And we had professional advice from an architectural planning firm that gave us these numbers. They had vetted the numbers with an outside cost estimator, and they were based on very current building costs in 2020.
And that was, if I could jump in and say, that was at a time with historically low borrowing costs.
Yes.
And historically low rate of inflation. And even when we embarked on the process that Jamie describes, we were building in, our professionals were building in inflation. And yet, as we all know, times changed in a hurry.
Yeah, they were building in 3.5% a year inflation in the cost of construction, which was totally reasonable and totally supportable and what anybody would have used when those estimates were made. And then, the world shifted.
Right.
I mean, it really shifted in so many ways, from overseas wars to supply chain issues to cost of manufacturing, and the cost of labor. And they all play into the cost of construction. And so what we found ourselves in the beginning of this year was with a project that we wanted that didn't fit our budget.
Okay.
And I insisted that we come back with a project that met the budget. So we had the architect cut a lot out of this building that many people felt was essential. And I said, but we don't have the money. So yes, a fourth bay is absolutely part of what this project should be and what we need as a community, but we don't have the money, so we cut it out.
And so so a fourth bay is a fourth parking spot, if you will, for the fire truck.
Yeah, I think Chief would probably say it's more than a parking spot, but it's to handle the equipment we need to respond to emergencies in this community. And remember, we have a 100-year-old fire station with 3 bays and a bay and back with 4, right? And we're going to build a new building for the future and not have at least equal capacity. That's crazy. So anyway, we had a real dialogue about this in the committee, and it's a committee with all different perspectives about what we should be doing and what we should be building. And but we came back with a design, the cut that matched the budget that we had, and we realized that was not the right thing for Ipswich, right?
Interesting.
Well, the key even then, Janice, was that we knew then the challenge being we had to meet the budget, but we also weren't going to cut public safety services. We had to find the savings in that space.
Right.
And everything was open for conversation at the time. Had to be.
And we did a lot of things to cut costs out of that design, and I don't want to go through the whole list, but a lot of things were changed in the building to make it more cost-effective and efficient building, but still serve the needs of the community. But at the end of the day, we had a big hole. We had a big hole in the fire side, and I think it was just really a little bit of serendipity that because of the pandemic that caused a lot of the issues that we had with construction pricing, there was also federal funding available to this community that we had been allocated. I think we got a total of $4 million, more or less, in ARPA funding. And that funding had been allocated, about half of it had already been allocated by the town to sewer replacement projects right out here on High Street, if you remember, other projects in the community. But there was $2 million available that had not yet been allocated. And so the conversation was like, what's the highest priority for us as a community for the use of that money? And it seemed to be just a good fit for a lot of reasons. Number one, ARPA funds can be used for public safety, and that's actually one of the principal purposes of that funding. Number two, there was a huge need that we had to make up for the difference between 3.5% inflation and 12% annual cost increases. So over the course of that 2 years that we were working on this project, in terms of the design, the cost of the project went up 18%.
Yeah.
And that's not something that you can make up by using cheaper materials or
Right.
Dumbing down the finishings
Or
doing
reducing
things like that.
services
Right.
critically.
Right? So it really would mean you'd shrink the building. And we just all felt that was not the right solution for Ipswich. And so we were fortunate. And the town manager, with the support of the board and endorsement of the Board of Selectmen, allocated that funding to fill the gap, part of the gap in the increase in cost, but also the gap in terms of square footage and putting the,
Right.
the fourth bay back in.
It would be, I can see your perspective and how incredibly difficult it would be to explain to the town that we're going to get to the budget but not have the services that we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, what kind of investment is that?
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So the voters have a question in front of them this coming town meeting about whether or not to provide some additional resources to further close that gap between what we had originally thought and the inflationary aspect of it. Can you talk me through what a yes vote on that article does and what a no vote on that article does?
Well, I'd start by saying I've been characterizing this warrant article, the question being, or the reason for asking it, I should say, is because we are going to be, as I've said, putting this project out to bid in January. That puts it between two town meetings. If we're fortunate, we receive bids that put us that right in that sweet spot of meeting our budget. But if we find ourselves needing somewhere between $1 and $500,000 to be able to hire the lowest bidder, we'd like to be able to do so in the winter and not have to seek additional funds later, not have to delay. We may not need this money. We may need some of it. Ideally, we won't need any of it, but we just like the little bit of that comfort of knowing there's a little something to allow us to keep moving.
Okay. And if we find ourselves in a situation where we don't need that money, what happens to the money that town meeting appropriates if the vote goes that way?
It doesn't get touched, remains in the town's coffers.
Okay.
Right, Jamie?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I think, this is viewed as a contingency fund, right? So it is contingent upon what the final bids come in. So I think if it doesn't get spent, we come back to town meeting and we can reappropriate it for some other purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And what does a no vote on that article do?
A no vote means that if we don't receive a bid or bids that meet our budget, that we have to go back and find things to cut out of the scope of the work. Could be as little as a choice of finishes, could be as much as a unit of space, but it puts us in a position of having to find things that we have to reduce the cost of.
Okay. And what does that do to the timetable and the timeline?
I don't, I think, so my view on this is, because I started this talking about how Bob and I were the guys who got up at town meetings, so
Right,
we're never
right.
coming back, right? So how can we go back to town meeting and ask for this? The reason we're bringing it back is because we think town meetings should have the choice to decide whether they want to supplement funds to ensure that we get the building that Ipswich needs or not. And if they say no, we'll go forward, we'll build a building.
Yeah.
It will not be the best building for Ipswich, but it will be a fine building for Ipswich. But I just think, we're trying to make the case here at the town meeting that, as Bob mentioned, the timing of this is such that, and we don't have a lot of flexibility as a community when we can raise money and appropriate money, so it's
Yes.
only twice a year. So the sequence is just such that we want the flexibility to be able to go forward with the project if we're pretty close, almost there, not have to rethink or rebid or delay the implementation of this project, which only increases the cost, right?
Right. Time
So it's not
is
like
money.
if we add 3 more months onto this process, it's going to cost more. I mean, inflation rates are coming down. They're not 12% a year anymore, but it's still a substantial amount of money on what is effectively a $30 million project.
Yeah.
If you delay 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, it's going to cost more, not less. So we just think town meetings should have the opportunity to have a say.
Yeah, that's a good way. I like the way you phrase that, because it's saying, as a committee, as the collection of 14 volunteers and professionals who made up the committee, we took on the task of delivering to the citizens the building that provides the services we promised that the citizens have asked that we provide. We want to give them the opportunity to just fill that gap that may occur. We owe it to the citizens to do what we can to deliver the building we promised.
I mean, it's their choice. It's town meeting's choice, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
they can, our obligation is to present the question, right? To present the article to town meeting and say, you've set up this committee to make this project happen. Here's what we think should be done to make it happen, and you can say yes or no. But obviously, we'll go forward with the building. It'll be a different building, depending on how the bids come in. But we think, given that it's been 100 years since we built the fire station, let's not nickel and dime it. Let's do it right.
And with regards to your question, Janice, about timing,
Yeah.
we are daily, constantly aware of the schedule we're trying to adhere to. December construction documents, January bidding, embark on construction. Between our project management team and the design team, we have professional estimators who tell us what this project's going to cost. And that is what sets the goals for budget and schedule to some extent. So time lost is money, and it either comes out of the building or it comes from taxpayers.
Yeah.
We don't want it to come from taxpayers. We did make that promise on the playing field, but we just asked for a little bit of buffer. It costs us something like $100,000 worth of building for every 30 days of lost time. So we have a very heightened sensitivity to meeting our design schedule, our estimating, our bidding schedule, and our construction schedule.
That's a very concrete way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I would like to give each of you an opportunity to share with the voters anything that is top of mind for you that I didn't cover. So Jamie, why don't you start? Is there anything else you'd like the voters to know?
How about a fun fact?
A fun fact? I am all about fun facts.
Among the many meetings that we held on this project over the past 4 or 5 months, in one of the meetings with the ZBA, Bob Gambale, who's the chair, said, who is now retired,
Yes.
said when he was hired as a firefighter in Ipswich, he was told this was a great time to come to Ipswich because we were going to build a new fire station. And he said there were a whole bunch of guys who got hired in that same year, and they were all told the new station is right around the corner. Well, here we are, I don't know how many, 40 years later, right? And we still don't have it. So I'm young to that process, right? I only started in 2002, so it's only been 20 years that I've been trying to find a way for Ipswich to get this building built. So I just feel good. I think we're right there. We're almost there. We're ready to go. And so I'm feeling good about the project.
Bob, wherever you are, we're sorry. We didn't fulfill that promise to you.
You'll get to see it, though.
And Bob, any thoughts you'd like to share?
I just feel, as we touched on this earlier, is that it's been a long haul. It's taken a lot of work by a lot of people to get to where we are. It's been a great team. I just feel lucky to have been part of such a big, good, professional, cooperative, collaborative group. I've been on town committees for something like 27 years, and this is the most rewarding one. I just feel like it's not just a generational opportunity, it's a multi-generational opportunity to make this project happen. And I hear in conversations I have from people around town when I talk about where we are and where we're going, the kind of issues we talked about today, I hear people say, people who understand there's other stuff to be done. There's
Right,
constantly needs. It's a busy time and a complex time to manage a town like ours, but people say to me, just do it, just get it done.
Yeah.
And I feel that acutely. I feel like we're just on the verge of being able to get this done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exciting in that way.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for your time today, and more importantly, thank you for your service. I think the public loses sight of the fact that all of these hours, all of these meetings are volunteer time. This is time you could be with family,
Yeah, don't
friends.
list them. You shouldn't
Yeah,
list
okay,
them.
so we won't list them. Yes, it is time that could be spent otherwise, and you choose to spend it in service of the community. And for that, we thank you.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Janice.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
thank everybody for watching. You have now seen what will amount to about an hour and a half of information on the new public safety facility that is upcoming. Please, if you have additional questions that we weren't able to answer, reach out to the committee, reach out to the chiefs.
It's a good point.
Conversation and dialogue is critical.
Well said, Janice. Thank you.
Thank you.